Okay, thank you for joining us today for another edition of TABC Talks. My name is Evangelina Aguilera, and I am the Regional Licensing Supervisor for San Antonio Region. Also joining us today will be Tana Travis, which is the Regional Licensing Supervisor for the Arlington Region. Before we get started, I am going to go ahead and go over the disclaimer, which is on the screen now. And the following agency guidance was developed to improve internal and external communications and ensure a more consistent application of the TABC statutes and rules. This guidance reflects appropriate processes, requirements, and interpretations based on the general situations presented herein. This guidance may not apply to every situation. So if you have a question about this guidance and how it applies to your specific circumstance, definitely contact the TABC directly. So before we get started, allow me to explain that this will be an interactive presentation. You will be able to submit your questions using the chat feature that is located at the bottom of your screen. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Myself, Tana Travis, and our attorney, Shayna Horton, from our Legal Services Division, will be responding to your questions. If you experience any technical difficulties, visit Zoom's Help Desk Center, located at the link on your screen. So our topic today is going to be protesting a TABC license or permit application. So it's important that I stress to you that protests were previously handled as a policy within TABC. Now they are set in statute and they can be found in TABC code and rules. So let's go ahead and look at the legislative and rule changes. Under the legislation, House Bill 1545, also known as the Sunset Bill, it was passed in 2019, and it contains provisions affecting how TABC reviews and makes decisions on license and permit applications, including the protest process. So this bill required TABC to adopt new rules, including laying out the requirements of the protest process. The effective date for this change was December 31st, 2020. So we'll review some key points. Now, there is a new protest form available on our TABC website, and it will give you the option to submit information or a protest via the web form or downloading the fillable PDF form that is located in our TABC public website. So let's review some key points. So protests, what we're going to review today is that protest and complaints defined. We're going to provide you what the definition of what a protest is and what a complaint is and what the difference between both would be. We're going to review basic requirements for a protest. We're going to review elements of a valid protest, standing for members of the public and government officials, timelines, reasonable grounds, withdrawals and rejections, and required methods of submission. So let's look at a protest definition, and this can be found in TABC Rules, Chapter 33. Written request for an administrative contested case hearing in which the protestant will participate as a party and present evidence to provide that TABC should not issue an original or renewal permit or license as proposed. Protestant must meet standing requirements in the Alcoholic Beverage Code before TABC may accept a protest. Now let's look at the definition for a complaint. A complaint is a written expression of concern regarding a person or business that holds or has applied for a license or permit, or that the complainant believes is violating or has violated laws and rules related to alcoholic beverages, handled according to TABC Rule 31.11. A complaint is not a request for a contested case hearing, and it does not itself initiate a legal proceeding. And of course, it does not afford any party status or legal rights to the complainant. Anyone can file a complaint. So let's review some basic requirements. So in order to submit a protest, there will be some basic requirements. Basic requirements are first and last name, physical address of protestant's property, approximate distance of property from proposed license location, contact information for a person filing the protest, all reasonable grounds that are the basis of the protest. Basically, reasonable grounds just means that it's a jurisdictional issue. Now, elements of a valid protest. So it's important that you know that a protest must be in writing. It must be submitted in writing. It does not have to be submitted on a TABC protest form, but still must contain required information listed in the rule. A new protest form contains fields for all of the information required in rules. So basically, when you're filling out a protest, make sure that the form is completely filled out, that there are no blanks, and you won't go wrong. All of the information that is required to be submitted is listed on that form itself. So elements of a valid protest are discussed in detail further along this presentation. So once again, elements of a valid protest, it must be in writing. The protest contains all required information. It cannot be anonymous. It's important that I stress, protests cannot be anonymous. We need a name and physical address that must be included on that form. It needs to be submitted using the method prescribed in the rule, submitted within timelines established in the rule. The protestant is actually eligible to protest under the Alcoholic Beverage Code. That's a requirement that the protestant is eligible to protest. And protest makes at least one allegation that is within TABC's jurisdiction to address. Members of the public. So applications that may be protested by a member of the public include on-premise permits or licenses if a sexually oriented business is to be operated on the premises. A renewal application for on-premise permits or licenses if a sexually oriented business is to be operated on the premises covered by the permit. So a petition is presented to TABC requesting a hearing that is signed by 50% of the residents who reside within 300 feet of any property line of the affected premises. Now, Section 11.431 and Section 61.313 of the Alcoholic Beverage Code. Now, another critical piece of determining whether a protest is valid is whether the person is eligible to protest per the Alcoholic Beverage Code, just as I referred to in the slide previous to this one. But we call it here in TABC is whether or not the protest has standing. This slide is actually the first of two that will show permits which can be protested and other requirements, such as distance and the protestant, the distance that the protestant resides from a property line. We'll go to the next, actually that slide. Thank you, Tana. So members of the public, this is a continuation of the previous slide. Applications that may be protested by a member of the public include on-premise permits or licenses if the person resides within 300 feet of any property line of the premises for which this permit is sought. A mixed beverage permit or wine and beer retailer's permit in a municipality of 1.5 million, or 1.5 million or more if any point of the property line or the premises is less than 300 feet from the nearest point on a property line of a residence, church, school, hospital, daycare facility, or social service facility as measured in a straight line and 75% or more of the permittee's actual or anticipated gross revenue is from the sale of alcoholic beverages. So what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Tana Travis, and she will do the continuation of the presentation. Tana.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Vanjie. So as we continue about who is authorized or who has standing to protest a license or a permit, Vanjie discussed the public's right to protest, and we're going to continue on with protests filed by government officials. So the following government officials may protest a license or permit application: a state senator, a state representative, the county commissioner or city council member who represents the area where the proposed premises or business will be located, the commissioner's court of the county in which the proposed premises will be located, the county judge of the county where the business will be located, the sheriff or the county or district attorney of the county where the business will be located, or the mayor of the city or town in which the proposed premises are located, and the chief of police, the city marshal, the city attorney of the city or town where the business will be located. Vanjie talked earlier about the Sunset Bill and the House Bill, and the Sunset Bill clarified that state senators and state representatives may protest an application, and it also clarified that they may protest any license or permit application without regard to whether it's an on-premise or off-premise location. So not only do you have to have standing to protest a license or a permit, the protests must be filed timely with our agency in order to be considered. To file a protest for a new application for a license or permit, or a current license or permit that is changing the address of their business, the protest must be filed no earlier than 60 days prior to the application being received by our agency, or no later than 15 days after TABC receives the application. In order to protest a renewal, you can file your protest 60 days prior to the expiration date of the permit up to the expiration date. And that is a timely filing of a protest. And that again is a very critical piece when you are deciding whether to protest a license or permit, is to ensure that it's filed timely. And our new rules have recently been modified to show the timelines in that new rule. Okay, so in order to protest, you have to have reasonable grounds. A protest must have reasonable grounds, and the definition from our rules is that it must make an allegation or concern regarding a matter within the commission's jurisdiction that is supported by credible evidence or information, and includes circumstances described in the Alcoholic Beverage Code, sections 11.46 through 11.481, and sections 61.42 through 61.46 and 61.50. The protest must make at least one jurisdictional allegation that could be a reason for TABC to deny an application. Now, reasonable grounds is a new term in the Alcoholic Beverage Code that we have also defined in our rule. It essentially means that an allegation or an issue raised in a protest is something that we, as the TABC, have the authority to address. Possible examples of reasonable grounds or jurisdictional issues include an allegation of drug activity, gang-related activity, violence, human trafficking, or other public safety-related issues. Possible examples of non-jurisdictional issues or allegations include noise or parking issues, maybe that the business will decrease the value of a residence. Those are examples of non-jurisdictional issues. Now, once a protest is filed, we will make the determination of whether it is a valid protest. And if we determine that it is not a valid protest or was not timely filed, then we may reject the protest, and that can result in us forwarding your protest information to be investigated as a complaint. And Vanjie earlier covered the definition of the differences between a protest and a complaint. Our agency will contact parties as necessary. If the protest is accepted, we will notify both the protestant and the applicant. If we reject the protest, we will only notify the protestant. So if a protest is filed and it's been filed timely and no application is received within a 60-day period, then we will reject that protest and return it back to the protestant. And then it is the protestant's responsibility to refile that protest with our agency if they would like that protest to remain on file. Can a protestant withdraw their protest? They may. They may withdraw their protest at any time, but if you use the web form to file your protest, then you cannot use the web form to withdraw your protest. You'll need to make contact with us. Okay. So there are 3 ways to submit or withdraw your protest. You can submit your protest by mailing the protest form to our Austin headquarters, and the P.O. Box address information is provided there to you. And it says it needs to be addressed to the licensing protest coordinator. You can file your protest through the web on the web form, or you can email each of our regional licensing offices, and we have provided you with a new protest email account there on your screen. So you can do it via regular mail, you can file the online form, or you can do it via email. We are limiting the ways in which a person can submit a protest to make it less likely that one might get lost and ensure that we timely evaluate them, since protests can hold up the issuance of a license or permit. And again, if you submit your protest via our web form, you cannot withdraw your protest via the web form. So in summary, we have talked about that when you file a protest, you must provide us with the information requested on that form, and that is your name and your address. A protest may not be filed anonymously, and it must cite jurisdictional grounds and be filed by a qualified protestant who has legal standing. Protests may be filed up to 60 days prior to an application being received by our agency, or up to 15 days after an application is received. If a protest is accepted, protests are heard before the State Office of Administrative Hearings, and the TABC commissioners affirm or deny the SOA decision. You can find more information about protests or filing a complaint on our public website under Contact Us. Okay, and that concludes our presentation on protests. And if you have questions now, we will take those from you. Shanna, are you on the call?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. So I do see we have a couple of questions already in our chat feature. Can you see those?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to address those or would you like us to?
Y'all go ahead and take a crack at it. And if you don't know the answer, I'll jump in. Okay, so I don't know. I actually don't know the answer to the second one about complaints about parking and noise levels. That's not covered under this rule.
So complaints about parking or noise levels or protests filed for those issues are not a jurisdictional issue. So they would not, those issues wouldn't qualify as a protest. And we would have to check with our enforcement division on handle complaints received about license locations for those allegations.
Yeah, I think what I remember them saying is that, sometimes they'll investigate things if that's one of the issues, but not if it's the only issue. But again, that can't be the sole basis for a protest.
Yes.
But as far as complaints, if it's one complaint and there's several new other ones, then my recollection is that they will go out and investigate. Or on premise, neighbors within 300 feet in straight line. Is it only in counties 1.5 million or more? May it be in a county of less population? Go ahead.
I was going to say, I believe that was addressed on the slide. Hold on just a minute. I apologize.
Slide 11. Slide 11, and it's under section 11.431 and section 61.313. Now, subsection 4 has the information in regards to mixed beverages and the population of 1.5 million, etc. I'm not really sure in regards to your county of less population. Slide 11, Tana.
Okay. And can you see that now, Vanjie? Do you see slide 11?
Yes, I do. So on here it says applications that may be protested by a member of the public, on-premise permits or licenses if the person resides within 300 feet of any property line of the premises for which the permit is sought. A mixed beverage permit or wine and beer retailer's permit in a municipality of 1.5 million or more. So on here or in section, you will find actually the section of the code that references the 1.5 million for a retailer's permit on section 11.431, and it would be subsection 4. In regards to, does TABC employees have to adhere to any timelines for a protest or complaints when investigating? To answer that question, we do have internal policies and procedures for protests and complaints. So the response to that question is yes.
I don't have those timelines in front of me currently. And certainly there are instances where a protest may require additional time to ensure that a complete investigation has been conducted.
Okay. Do we have any additional questions? No. We do want to thank everybody for your time. We appreciate your attendance in our presentation. Thank you.